I think this topic is really, really interesting. Um, and I think it's something that not enough people talk about. Um, and so just to kind of kick it off, the prospect of building wealth while staying true to yourself or keeping your soul, I think it's really interesting. And I think usually people have like a black and white concept of this of, hey, you can do one or the other. Like you can be a great person, you can excel at everything outside of life, but maybe, money's that's gonna take you down a wrong path. Or there's the other option of, hey, money controls you. It's everything. That's the important part to people. And so I feel like people kind of view this as a black and white topic. Um, but I don't think it is at all. I think wealth building is one of the most powerful things in the world, and I think it's one of the biggest challenges in the world, both to do and to keep yourself. But it's possible to do both. And so, Chase, I think you've done a pretty good job of this. Like, what's been your experience as obviously starting out, getting to where you are now, and kind of how that journey's been for you?
It's interesting. I feel like there's a lot to kind of unpack here. Um, I think it's definitely there's something to be said when you start kind of with nothing and then you go through this like journey of building wealth. One thing that comes to mind to me is it's almost more important as to who you become in the process than what you're actually building or the wealth kind of that you accumulate. I also I look at, some of the people that I've been privileged to be around and meet. I also feel like I'm very, 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 very early in on that journey. And so sometimes it feels like I'm kind of still just getting started, even though I know compared to some people, like that's not true, And so I think it's just, again, I think it's really, I can only look at through the lens of somebody that started with nothing and then slowly has started to build wealth over time. And I think that's an important way to do it. I think it's very important that you focus on, you stay true to the things that are important to you. So like who you become in the process, I think is more important than the wealth or the money itself. And then it's also very important to me, at least, and a lot of the guys that we've been privileged to get to know, that you don't lose the other things that are important to you along the way. Like your family and your religion and your health and all those other aspects that are truly a part of, like, in my opinion, being wealthy or being successful in life are more important. But I will say that when I was first starting out, like, it's really hard to get ahead if you don't really, really just try and focus on it. And so some of that other stuff does go to wayside. Like if I look back, like it was cool for me. I was just at this health conference and as we were sitting there talking about some of this stuff, I could honestly sit there and it's like a couple years ago at these GoBundance events, they would ask where you're flirting with disaster or the thing that you're most concerned about or where you're working on the most. And for me, it was always like health and fitness because I was exercising, but I was not in very good shape. And it's because that's one thing that I was letting go in this pursuit kind of wealth. And so it's interesting because you gotta focus on those other things. And then again, what you realize along the way is you set these, you have to be careful because you'll set these milestones, or at least I have, and I've talked to other people that have. And once you reach those, you realize that literally nothing changes. And that you're kind of chasing this spot, and you got to be really careful about not making that what's important, because once you get there, you realize that you're still the same person, nothing has changed, and that's not the most important thing. How about you? What has your experience been so far, either personally or what you've seen with other people?
Yeah, I think really I've been fortunate to be around a lot of people who do it well, and definitely known some people who it hasn't worked out well for. I think a lot of people, a lot of it depends on who you surround yourself with, and I think that's something we've talked about a lot in the past. But I can point to groups of guys who worked in corporate America. They all made more money than they could spend in a lifetime, but every one of them's divorced. Every one of them's got a tough family situation now. And so a lot of it is making really intentional choices along the way of how you keep that. And, the thought that comes into mind for me is there's a saying that, drunk words are sober thoughts. And, I don't know whether that's 100% true, but money, it functions kind of like alcohol. It exacerbates what your tendencies are. And so, if you tend to do something and then you have the ability to do it more, you're going to do it more. And man, if that's a good thing, it can be amazing. If you love giving, if you love, taking free time and volunteering or spending it or doing all these things, like if you have more wealth and more ability to do these things, like your life is going to exponentially get better because you're doing those tendencies. But if you have tendencies to things that can be negative, or things that, man, when you have more free time and more ability to do those things, it can turn into a negative quickly. And so I think what Chase said is 100% true. You're never going to have, like, we've talked about it before, work-life balance, in my opinion, all the time is a lie. It doesn't exist. And you're going to have times when you've got a sine curve and you're working too much, or you're too much time with your family. Not too much time with your family. I don't think there's any such thing, but more time with your family, less time at work. And so there are going to be balancing points, but I think you have to surround yourself with the right people, and you have to understand who you are at your core. And just because you have tendencies to do certain things doesn't mean they have to come true, but you can't stop them and you can't mitigate them if you don't understand them. And so I think wealth is, man, it's one of the greatest blessings you can have because of the time freedom, the freedom to address things with your family. It's one of the biggest blessings in the world. But I think more often than not, probably it's one of the biggest challenges people have. I think people tend to look at wealthy people and think, man, they don't have a care in the world. They have money so they can do what they want. And the reality is, a lot of times it turns into a negative for people, and they may continue to have financial success. But maybe their family life suffers, or, things outside of the office suffer. And so I think it's something, if that is your goal, and I don't think it's a bad goal, then you need to be very intentional about how you set up your life, who you surround yourself with, talking to people who've done it the right way. Because I think with, the old Spider-Man quote, with great power becomes great responsibility. With wealth becomes a responsibility to treat it well, to steward it well for your family, and to make sure that it doesn't affect you. And so I think it's a conversation that's not had enough. And I think it has the ability to be really positive, but can be negative for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think a lot of it also. There's a lot of negative connotations for some people around wealth, which is it's just like it's a weird mindset thing that some people have. And I know for me personally, it's like some people that I personally knew, or my family, like kind of, they have like a negative kind of connotation towards wealthy people. And it's odd to me because I've started with zero. And again, I feel like I'm just getting started, but I have built a little bit of wealth, and I have been able to get around guys like, people that are in GoBundance and stuff like that. And so, and then I see some of them that are very successful, very wealthy, and but they're some of the kindest, most caring, most giving people that I've ever met. Not every single one of them. Like, I'm sure there's a few bad apples in there that would be a jerk to work for, or whatever. But for the most part, like most of those guys, like they truly care about their family and their faith, and they're the people that work for them and around them, and giving back. And again, some of the most generous people that I've met, and the impact that they're able to make through giving and stuff. And so to me, maybe it's just because the people that I've chosen to surround myself around. I'm sure there's some like truly negative or evil people out there that are wealthy, and maybe that is true with some of those people, but it's just, I guess, the people I've been around that has not been my experience. And then I think the biggest thing, like you said, I think it's kind of a magnifier of who you are. So wealth is a magnifier. If you're kind of a bad person, or you like to do bad things, and you have a bunch of money, like it's just going to be that much easier for you to go out and do it. I think as long as you're a good person, or you're striving towards being a better person, it's going to continue to magnify that. And then I haven't reached it, but at some point, like, it doesn't matter anymore. And so it's like, you accumulate a certain amount of wealth. And at some point, I think most people are like, they have this weird big picture in their mind that you have to become a billionaire to live this lifestyle or whatever. But it's like most of the guys I know through GoBundance, or even the ones that are super, super wealthy, like, they don't spend a ton of money. Like, it's really like a certain amount or a certain percentage. And after that, everything in their life is kind of like, they can do what they want, when they want, and go where they want, and travel and etc. And then the rest is just because they want to. A lot of them, at least for me personally, and I know a lot of the guys that I know, they're driven by impact and wanting to kind of make a big impact in this life. And so, I think as long as you're focused on those things, that's the important thing. I also think it's worth like noting is it's, again, when you're first getting started out, um, it's the process of it. So like, you've got to really focus on the positive things and becoming a better person along the way. Because I think that's the separator. Like, you see these people that like build a little bit of wealth and they squander it immediately, or they get into bad stuff and it like sucks them back down. And so I think that's where you got to be very careful of it. And then again, I think I mentioned it briefly earlier, but I think the biggest thing, and this came up at this event a little bit that I was just at, is having these like ideas in your head, like these big milestones where once I get there, then I made it. And so it's like, you got to be really careful with that, because it doesn't matter. It could be $100,000, $1,000,000, $10 million, $100 million. Because if you get there and then your mind, you've already decided that you're going to make it at this point, and then you realize that you're still the same person. So it's just, you got to be really aware of that. And it's something I've experienced a little bit along the way, but they brought up somebody who's very far along in this journey, and they got hit this huge milestone, and they were like depressed because it's like they hit this milestone and they realized that literally nothing in their life changed. And so you can't focus on that. For me, it's important to focus on kind of all these aspects of life, and then constantly be just moving forward and have the focus be on moving forward in every aspect, and not. And I think that's a big part of this podcast. Like when we started it, and the tension through the podcast is it's that relentless growth. How can we grow in every aspect of our life, but not focus so much on one? Because if you're just focused on wealth and you hit that spot, like it's not going to feel good. Like, and so it's almost a waste.
I think that's a great point. And I think, I think there are some studies that bear that out, and I can't remember the number off the top of my head, and they're a little old, but it was a much lower number than anybody would expect when beyond that point, like, money doesn't really change your life or make you happy. And it's not totally true, but the last number I saw was like, it was $70,000 or $80,000 a year. And like after that point, like the impact of every extra dollar was like dramatically decreased. And so I think exactly what Chase is talking about, the concept of tying like happiness or like satisfaction, and we all do it to a certain extent. Hey, if I had X, or if my net worth was X, man, at that point I could relax. My life would be different. We all set those arbitrary goals in our head, but a lot of times, yeah, when you get there, it's just it's like buying something that you've looked at forever. You're so excited about it, and you get it, and you use it for a day, and then you're like, man, why did I spend that money on that thing, or something like that? And it's not a regret standpoint, but it's just that we tie so much anticipation of happiness or satisfaction in those future goals, and it doesn't always work out. And that's where, to take it back, being rooted, for me and Chase, I think a lot of it's being rooted in faith, being rooted in your family, just having those things. That it doesn't matter what the dollar value is. It doesn't matter what your net worth is. My 3-year-old and my 1-year-old, they wouldn't know if I walk in the door after work whether I lost everything that day or whether, it was a great day. And they're going to be happy to see me, and they're going to smile. And that's the important stuff, and that ability to keep that stuff front of mind. And sometimes it's hard to separate. If work's not going well, sometimes it's really difficult to come home and put on a good face and do that stuff. But that's the truly important stuff. And so I think that's where a lot of people run into trouble is, hey, when I get here, my life's going to change. And if they haven't made the setup for their life to change at that point, it's not going to. It's gonna continue to be the same. And the reality is, man, my life is great. If a lot of things changed uh, from a positive standpoint, I don't know that my life would change very much. And that's a great place to be in. But it's making sure that your happiness is not tied up in those little goals. So I think that's a great point that Chase made. And I think it's something, no matter what your level of success is, it could be, hey, when I hit I'm making $20 an hour right now. When I hit $25 an hour, like that's going to be a huge shift. Like I'm going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and maybe some of that's true, but it's not going to satisfy you the way you think it's going to. And I think that's the dangerous point is you can always pursue more, and more is not a bad thing, but more can be a bad thing if your mental is tied up in that's going to be great. So that's a great point by Chase. But to kind of close it out, like I think Chase made a good point. Relentless growth. Like this is what we're about. Like these are the conversations of how do you navigate this stuff. I think they're the conversations that aren't being had enough. So Chase, what would your advice be? Someone who's, experiencing a little success or getting started, like what's the mental framework that you think would be helpful for them as they move forward?
Like I said, this is an interesting topic because there's a lot. I feel like there's a lot of ways we go with this. I think identity is a big part of it. I think especially as men, our identity, whether we realize it or not, is very important to us. And that can cause us a lot of problems, or it can be a good thing depending on how you handle it. I know when I was younger, it caused me more problems than it did good. I think as I look at it now, I try to just be aware of it. But I think, especially as young men, you have to be very careful tying your identity only to financial or wealth milestones. So I agree. I think wealth is very important. And I think, if you have the opportunity to build wealth, you should absolutely go for it. But I'd just say be very careful not to tie your identity only to that. So I think it's very important that you realize like those other things that are very important and try to at least enjoy or realize how blessed you are along the way. Kind of enjoy the ride. A lot of people talk about it's not that destination, but it's like the travel to get there, who you become in the process that's most important. So I think just being aware of that, and then trying to enjoy it. And again, having other things that you're prioritizing, not just wealth, because I do think that if you just focus on that, the other parts of your life are going to suffer. And that's definitely not the only thing that's important. It's not bad. And I definitely think people should try to build wealth, but it's just kind of realizing that you're not solely tying your identity to how much wealth you've built or how much money you make, but just the person that you're becoming and going to continue to try to become.
I think that's, I couldn't really have said that better myself. So I think that's an absolute key. And the other thing I would say is that, and this is connected but not connected, I think another super important thing as you experience more success is limiting your lifestyle. And so I think it's kind of a counterintuitive part to this topic, but I think where a lot of people run into trouble is they do tie up success in, hey, when I make X, I'm going to be able to buy X and X and X. And there's always things to buy. I don't care if you got $10 or $1 billion, you can spend that money if you really want to. And so, but when you do that, man, it gives you less flexibility. It gives you less ability to handle the bad times, which will come. They'll come for all of us. Now is not a great time in real estate. Chase and I would both say that it's not fantastic right now. And so there are going to be times. And so the more you expand your lifestyle as you achieve success, the less flexibility you're really going to have. And I think that's the counterintuitive part is you have to save, you have to live in a way that's different sometimes than maybe the income you have. But that's a way to purposefully disconnect the amount of success you're having with your life. If you don't live, and I think, man, yeah, there really is a ton to unpack on this. So I think we could talk about this for 3 hours. But one of the most impactful books in my life is Millionaire Next Door. I'd recommend it to everybody. And it's all about, hey, what does a millionaire actually look like? and they don't look like what you think they look like. The average car a millionaire drives is a Ford F-150. It's the most popular car that a guy on a job site drives. Millionaires, wealthy people, they don't drink $1,000 bottles of wine at dinner. They probably cook out with their family. Like wealthy people by and large, and obviously there are exceptions. There are people that do exorbitant things or crazy things, and that's not bad. But most people who are wealthy live what you would think is a very normal life, and where most people would never know they were wealthy. And I think that's part of the secret is their personal satisfaction is tied up in things that aren't related to money, and that's why they're able to keep money. And a lot of times is because it's not tied up in it. And so that's a book I'd recommend to everybody. But just knowing that how wealth is depicted in social media, on TV, that's not wealth. That's marketing. That's different things. But real wealth is spending time with your family, not being stressed. It's being able to have those moments. And so that would be my encouragement, is just understand what real wealth is and what it's not, and pursue that right goal. Set the right goal for you, and go for it. I think Chase and I are both saying, by no means don't do this. Man, it's awesome. It's a great journey. And I'm not there. I don't think Chase is there. We both got goals that are bigger than where we're at now. But when I get there, I hope, I'm not there yet, I hope it doesn't really change anything. It's going to be super satisfying to hit that goal. But like I said, when my 1-year-old reaches for me, that's what's important, So just concentrating on the little things like that, I'd say, is the biggest thing. But anything else you want to add, Chase?
No, I think those are all great points. I think I come back to what's there, right? Because I think for you or someone, it's the goalpost is gonna slowly move, and that's okay. But just be careful that it's not like a set. Like when I get there, that everything, I'm gonna be happy. It's just not. It's gonna feel exactly the same as where you're sitting today. I like the not overspending, and I agree. Like that, and that's, I think most wealthy people live very modestly. And I still struggle on spending money on personal stuff. Like we just bought, my wife really needed a new car, and like I very much struggled. We ended up buying a 3-year-old used car with a lot of miles on it. And it's just like, it is what it is. And could I have, afforded to go out and, spend the money to buy a brand new one that was an absorbent amount of money? Like probably, but like it's not necessary, right? And so, and again, maybe someday it wouldn't matter, but I think that's all great points. So this is a very interesting topic, and it's something that we can definitely break down. And I feel like you could probably almost break this into a bunch of separate topics. I would say before we wrap up, if anybody has any questions or anything regarding this, like, I guess just kind of wealth and what that looks like along the way, and kind of maybe what we've seen, because even if we're not, I don't think either one of us feel like we're there, but even though it's something we're striving to, we've had the ability to be around people who maybe are. And so I'd love to answer questions probably if anybody has any, but I think that kind of, at least for now, wraps it up for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Please reach out. If this episode was great for you, or if we didn't cover something, leave a comment, let us know. Please give us a rating. But we really appreciate everybody tuning in. And yeah, I think we'll have to tackle this again soon, because I think we could go in a lot of different directions. But really appreciate everybody listening. We'll talk to you guys next week.